All right, we're ready for battle.
It just feels awkward if I don't have a weapon in my hand. It really does. But welcome back, or welcome to another edition of Nain's Shorts. We are once again in the living room of the Wandering Ronin. I'll let you guys digest that for a second, and you'll know who I'm talking about. But once again, we're here. We're shouting out some of the t-shirts that we've collected along the way. Again, you want to shout out to your school? Send us a shirt. I'm a size large. Extra large or large for you? I don't know. You lost weight? Large for him too. Anyways, my producer and director, the Wandering Ronin. Anyways, today we're shouting out Golden Dragon Ohana. Now, I really like this shirt, and I've actually worn it a lot. Mostly because that was the first time that I was introduced to Casey McPartland. Funny man. Before his passing, we actually just communicated via email, and not only did he recognize me without, I think, ever seeing a picture of me, but he made me laugh so many times, and just this quick back and forth. It was amazing. He was a wonderful man to have met, and of course, the late great Senior Grandmaster Pete Morales. I believe that was one of the last Ohana 8s that he was at, or at least I believe so. I don't know the history exactly, but I'm very grateful to have met them both at least once before their passing. So may they rest in peace, and of course they will always live on in our memories, as I am now also in Kaju Kempo and of the same lineage with Senior Grandmaster Bob Gomez. So, oh wait, no, it's just Grandmaster Bob Gomez. Sorry, I added the senior. Remove that. Exit. Delete. But we're not gonna, because we don't edit. Anywho, going on about our topic about classes, right? We've recently been discussing kind of the significance that go into that. And recently, this last class we had, we told the students it was going to be a test. But really what it was an evaluation of what they understood. Now, I've had very little experience when it comes to testing and evaluating a student. Again, I'm still new to this, but also I don't have a lot of experience in the traditional arts as a student. So the testing aspect of it is still something new to me. Now, from what I understand from the little that I have done for, say, a curriculum, you know the stuff, you perform the things, and I've heard stories of places where it's like a cram school. They cram, they get it done, they do the curriculum up until that level, and then they kind of forget about it. Grandmaster Bob Gomez continuously has us practice it. Like, you have to know everything, and I believe that's more of the standard, where you have to know all the curriculum up to that belt and demonstrate it, not just that particular level. But here's the thing, though. We're not a very traditional martial arts, especially the way that we train. So when we gave the students this idea of test, it really just was to trigger their minds to understand that we're going to see what they know. But for us, as the instructors, what I was looking for was really who understood what and why. What's the reason that this person remembered this part and this person didn't? Why is this person really good at this and this person is not? One of the fundamental ideas that we operate under, especially as instructors, is knowing, first of all, the material, knowing yourself as a person, as an individual, because again, we've talked about how that affects a lot of what we do and a lot of what we think and say. But the third, and I think the most important one, is knowing the student. You really have to, I think, understand how they process information, and if we don't, then we could possibly do a misservice to them in leading them the wrong way. Because there are some students that learn faster than others. And unfortunately, we've seen too often that those are the students, the ones that learn fast, the ones that get it quickly, that get the most attention. And we've heard even grandmasters admit, yeah, when you get to a certain size of a class, oftentimes you only really pay attention to the 3 or 4, depending on the number of students that you have overall. But a smaller group of people, the ones that are excelling, the ones that are understanding and getting it. that are able to perform the things that you've been teaching. And I want to avoid that so much. And the reason behind that is because I want the students that are doing the worst, and even saying the worst isn't really a great sense of evaluation for them, but the ones that are struggling the most would probably be a better verbiage to say, in grasping the concepts, or at least the group of ideas and the curriculum up until this point. Because we are writing things down and we are putting it on paper and we are giving it to the students and letting them know, here, this is the stuff you kind of need to know by this amount of time. And some of them were freaking out because they knew they did not train. And it's not hard to tell when somebody hasn't been training, because they look just as sloppy as when they first learned it. They retain some things, but even that tells you a lot about what that student needs in order to progress. Because depending on what kind of instructor you are, either you're giving them all the information and some of them are getting, some of them are not, but you progress, you keep going, you keep going with the class because you have a number of students and you can't hold back the entire class for one or two people, and I completely understand that. Or you have the instructor that spends too much time on one person and everybody else is kind of doing their own thing, and you neglect the growth of the entire group. And that's really what we were trying to focus, is how do we get the entire group to move together? How do we do that? How do we get everyone on the same page without slowing everybody else down? How do you keep everybody progressing at a good rate together without neglecting one or two of them? How do you keep everybody engaged and growing at the same time? And frankly, I have no idea. I really don't. And I'm grateful to have the guidance of somebody that is a bit more, seasoned, I would say, than I am in reference to the teaching aspect of it. And I do look to them for a lot of advice, and I'm constantly checking. And that's one of the things that came up, is that you have to really evaluate each class on two separate ideas. One, the individual students. How did this person grasp this? How did that person do it? What's going on with this person? Is it something that's going on personally outside of class? Or do they have some sort of issue with learning? Because we had a student at one point a few years ago where it seemed very difficult for them to get it. It was very awkward. They were moving. They were athletically fit, but it just wasn't clicking. And finally, a conversation was had with that student, and come to find out, they have a learning disability. So just knowing that switched the entire way that student was approached, the lessons were given to them. And as we continued on, even the student themselves asked, well, why haven't I gotten that lesson yet? And we bluntly told them, you're not ready for it. And was that okay? Like, now I have to evaluate it. Was that the right response? At that time, I thought it was. But I wasn't an instructor then. I was just a fellow student. And to me, that makes sense. Because I know I get the lessons that I need when I need them, when I'm ready for them. Because I put enough work and effort to everything up to that point. And then my instructor sees something within me and says, okay, you're ready for the next bit. Because again, we don't have a curriculum, so we don't really have to worry too much about everybody having a certain level of understanding. Enough, definitely, there still has to be a base understanding of something, a language that we built. And that's the basics, right? The basic movements, the basic ideas, the basic strikes, basic footwork, basic stance. All these things are still incredibly important and valuable. But our focus then becomes less about the next level in the teaching and more about the next level for each individual. And for that individual, yeah, because of his learning disabilities, there are certain restrictions that we didn't put on him, but he has himself naturally because of the way he is. And as an instructor, we have to take that into account. So that's part of the evaluation, is to figure out, how does each individual student really learn? How do they take in information? And there has to be a dialogue. There has to be a real open dialogue, not just an observation, but also just talking to the person. One of the biggest things we like to do at the end of each class is literally go to each person and ask them, what did they get out of the class? What did they learn? And everybody says something different. And some of them really amaze you in the responses that they give, because you realize, wow, you actually thought beyond what we were actually giving you. It's great. And then you have some students that are so focused on the minutia of the physical stuff that you realize they missed the lesson altogether. And so you have to really take the time to look at that and figure out what's your best next move and try it out. And it may not work. And then you have to try again and reevaluate. And it's a constant back and forth. But that's the individuals. You know, that's one-on-one. That's, even in a class setting, you're still looking at the one-on-one, one individual, the people and the way that they go separate from the class. But then you also have to evaluate the class, or at least this is the conversation we've been having. Is then, how do you then rate the class? How do you look at an entire body of people, a group of people, and assess them as if they were an individual? You put them together and you see how they perform with one another. You switch them with training partners and you see what sticks and what doesn't, what changes. Because now you're not looking at the performance of the one, but of the group. How do they feed off one another? How do they communicate? Do they communicate? What are they communicating? Now you're really looking at the group setting, the group mentality. And oftentimes, as we talked in other episodes, you kind of attract certain minded people depending on what you put out as an individual, as an instructor. But beyond that, you're teaching these students to think for themselves and be individual, but then work with one another. And the way we teach oftentimes breaks down into different forms, different parts. Say, for example, we always talk about how the arms and the legs work independently from one another, but they work towards the same goal. So here you have these individual pieces, these individual people that are all working towards the same goal. To get better, to progress, to learn more. For their own individual reasons, definitely. And that will be part of the assessment for the individuals, but as a group. How does that work? What happens when you have one student that is having a bit more trouble advancing, who is a little bit slower, for lack of a better word, in their progression? How do you keep the group cohesive so they, again, move together without neglecting that one individual, or without making that individual feel like they are just struggling too much and would quit? Because you often see that. You see that in classes. You see people, the turnaround rate for martial arts is pretty big. I don't remember the statistics exactly, but a lot of them leave. And very few of them stay long enough to become black belts. And of those black belts, very few of those become instructors. And why is that? Is it a personal drive? Is it the way that we teach? Is it a certain amount of neglect that we give those students? Is it any of the things that we just talked about right now that affect the way that the martial arts progress? What do you do with a black belt once you achieve it? All these questions then arise as to the progression of the individual student, but also the school in general. I've heard wonderful stories about GMs meeting students that they had back when they were little kids and now adults. And they still show the same amount of respect. They still show that connection that they had when they were children. And maybe they didn't reach black belt, they reached to a certain level, and because of life they had to go in a different direction, or they just chose something else to do to occupy their time. But there's something about the martial arts that really resonates with people in so many different levels. And now as an instructor, how do I portray that? How do I give those lessons to my students? Not just the curriculum, but the ones about character. The ones about bringing the best of themselves, of bringing that out within them. And believe it or not, folks, this thought literally just spawned right now as we're having this conversation, because now I'm realizing that as an instructor, I have to really keep in mind a clear idea of where I want these students to go, not just in their abilities, but in the way that they perform their abilities, the mentality behind it, and the character that then they show to everyone else. Not as a representative of me, of course not. That's not the important part. Not a representative of the school or the name, but of themselves more than anything. Because I think that's what becomes the lasting part in any student, is what you help them realize about themselves. And sometimes you have to be blunt and honest and say, hey, you really suck. Hopefully you have enough rapport where they won't take it too negatively. And sometimes, like it was in my case, you have to put down their ego. You have to do it in such a way that it resonates with them, that it actually hurts, not physically, but emotionally enough that they want to do something about it. Because it's not just about putting them down. It's not just about knocking them down a few pegs. It's also about building them up in the right direction. You can't do one or the other. You have to do both, in my opinion. Or at least what I've seen so far with all the good instructors that I've met and had conversations with. It's a duality thing. You have to do both. You have to help them deconstruct who they don't want to be while helping them figure out who they do and construct that. And I don't think it matters what age people are. Like I said before, we have students who are 12, 11, and we have students who are in their mid to late 50s. And in between, and everybody's there for a different reason, but ultimately they stay for the same. And that's the environment that you built, the way that you instruct. And it really is about the student and evaluating where they are at any given point and then redoing it. Repeating the process over and over again and refining as you go. Because as they're learning, I have to learn with them. I have to grow alongside them. Otherwise, I'm just narrating. Otherwise, I'm just spewing information out and I'm not actually teaching them anything. And again, this sort of just popped into my head right now. So I have a lot to ponder about, folks. And I wonder, those who are instructors, what do you think about? What are the things that you use to evaluate your students? Is it pure performance? Is it their character? Is it the way they behave? What is it that you really use to measure them as people, as individuals, as a group, as a class? I would love to hear your input on that, because it's something that I still have a long way to learn and go before I even come close to feel comfortable enough to say, I got an idea about that. So, thank you very much for joining me on another one of Nain's shorts. Again, shout out to the Golden Dragon Ohana. And the VEA, I believe, is having another collaborative April 1st. So look out for that. And then also our good friends at, is it Dragon's Den Armory? Would be the 15th. Yeah, John Atkinson. And is that March or April 15th? April 15th, right? One of those. I know there's a lot of events coming along, folks, and I will get my dates right eventually, but definitely the VEA, April 1st. So look out for that, which reminds me I need to sign up. But we'll definitely be there, so come on by, join us.
Dennis.
Oh, and our good friend Dennis for the OKO, right? No?
Yes.
Oh, the OKO. But no, Dennis is going to be... He will be teaching at the VEA, right? Yeah, April 1st. Dennis, see you on the mat, brother. If you need a nuke, 150 an hour. I'll give you the family discount. Don't worry about it. But yeah, folks, look out. There's a lot of events coming on, and there's a lot to be learned still. So keep on training, keep it going, keep asking questions, and hopefully we'll figure out some good answers to go along with that. But till the next one, as usual, 3, 2, 1, cut! Seriously, this thing is cool.